Maren Calloway didn't expect to knock over a 6-foot-tall man and a tray of oat milk lattes on a random Tuesday morning, but here she was, blinking up at a stranger whose suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Oh my God," she gasped, scrambling to her feet, slipping once on the wet tile before he caught her elbow. "You okay?" His voice was deep, calm. He didn't sound mad. That made it worse. "I wasn't watching where I was going," she blurted out, brushing latte foam off her jacket sleeve. "I'm so sorry. I'm just here to visit my friend. She works on the 22nd floor. I didn't mean to. It's fine." His mouth twitched, almost like he was fighting a laugh. "You sure you're not hurt?" "No, I'm well, maybe my dignity," she muttered, cheeks burning. He looked down at his drenched suit, then back at her. "It's just coffee. Happens." She glanced around the sleek marble lobby of the building. The security guards were watching. Her friend hadn't come down yet, and this guy, he wasn't just anyone. There was a quiet authority in the way he stood, even soaked in espresso. His jacket was tailored, his shoes spotless well until 2 seconds ago. "I'll pay for your dry cleaning," she offered, reaching into her tote bag for her wallet. "No need." He held up a hand. "Seriously? You sure?" "Because I feel awful, like truly awful. I promise it's fine." He looked her over not in a creepy way, but like he was genuinely curious. "Who are you here to see?" "Danica. Danica Myers. She works in marketing for Westbridge & Co." His eyes flicked toward the elevators, then back to her. "She's on the 22nd. Yeah, I know her." Of course he did. Everyone here probably knew everyone else. She felt like a fish in a very expensive aquarium. "I'm Maren, by the way, Maren Calloway." He reached out, shaking her hand with a firm grip. "Foster O'Connell." "Foster," she blinked. "That's a strong name," he laughed, and this time it wasn't restrained. It was real, warm. "Thanks, I think." Before she could say more, the elevator dinged and Danica came rushing out in heels and a blazer that screamed corporate boss. "Maren, you made it," her friend called, hugging her. Then she glanced at Foster. "Oh no, did she run into you?" Foster nodded. "Literally." "I swear this girl could trip over air," Danica muttered, sheepish. Maren elbowed her. "Thanks for the backup." Foster's eyes lingered a beat longer than necessary. "Well, I've got another meeting." "Danica, good to see you. Maren, take care of that elbow." And then he turned and walked straight toward the private elevator at the back, the one with the gold trim and no buttons. Maren stared. "Wait, is he like important?" Danica grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the elevators. "Oh, Maren." "That man is Foster O'Connell, the Foster O'Connell. He owns this building. He's the CEO of Weston Holdings." Maren nearly tripped again. "He owns the building? And half the company's in it. You're joking." "I wish I was. He's worth like 100 million at least." "And you just baptized him in oat milk." Maren groaned. "I want to disappear into the floor," Danica snorted. "You're lucky he's weirdly nice. Some days he barely speaks to people. Other days, well, you just never know with him." The rest of the visit was a blur. Danica gave her a tour of the office, introduced her to a few coworkers, and then left her alone in the lounge to grab lunch. Maren wandered to the window, looking out over the city skyline. She wasn't used to this kind of view, or this kind of world. She was just an art teacher from a public school in Queens, visiting her college roommate on a day off, and yet, she couldn't stop thinking about Foster. The next day, she returned to drop off Danica's forgotten ID badge. "I'll be 2 minutes," she told the security guard. "Just running it up." But the moment she stepped into the elevator, the doors opened and there he was again, this time dry, polished, and still somehow, looking at her like he remembered everything. "You again," he said. "I swear I'm not stalking you," he smiled. "Well, now I'm starting to think fate's trying to tell me something," she laughed nervously. "Like maybe you need to ban me from the building, or maybe I need to ask if you've had lunch." Her eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely." He stepped aside. "There's a restaurant on the rooftop. Come with me?" Every part of her screamed that this wasn't her world, but something in his voice, confident but not pushy, made her step forward. "Okay," she said quietly. "Why not?" 10 minutes later, she was sitting at a table with a city view, a linen napkin on her lap, and a menu with no prices. "You're not used to this, are you?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Not even a little." "Good, that means you're honest." "You're not." "What I expected." He leaned back in his chair. "What did you expect?" I don't know, arrogance, I guess. You own buildings and companies and wear suits like they were made for you, he chuckled. They were technically, she rolled her eyes. See. That, but I'm also a guy who likes grilled cheese, drives himself to work, and apparently gets taken out by flying lattes. She laughed, genuinely this time, and he watched her like he liked the sound. By the end of lunch, something had shifted. He wasn't just a millionaire CEO. And she wasn't just some girl who spilled coffee. There was something there, unspoken, but real. When he walked her to the elevator, he didn't ask for her number. He didn't need to, because when the doors closed, he simply said, "Come back soon, Maren," and somehow she knew she would. The third time Maren saw Foster, she was elbow-deep in clay. She'd taken her students on a field trip to the Midtown Art Museum for a hands-on pottery workshop. And while the kids were sculpting wildly uneven mugs and joyfully lopsided creatures, she was helping one of them smooth the rim of a bowl when a low voice cut through the chatter. "Apparently, you're not just a latte assassin." She turned so fast her hand left a streak of wet clay across her cheek. Foster stood just inside the doorway, sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie today. His presence drew attention without him trying. Museum staff subtly straightened. Even the chaperoning parents glanced over. Maren blinked. "Are you following me? I could ask you the same." He glanced at the group of third graders, then back at her. "Didn't realize you were an art teacher. You didn't ask." He studied the scene, a boy trying to attach a too large handle to a too small cup, a girl holding up a dragon with 3 heads and 1 wing. "They're creative. They're brilliant," she corrected. "Even when they make monsters with no symmetry. And you teach all of them, every weekday, unless the subway decides otherwise." He approached the work table cautiously, like he wasn't used to environments without glass walls and espresso machines. "I haven't been in a classroom since I barely passed high school lit. Let me guess. You read half the book and still argued with the teacher anyway." He gave her a look of mock offense. "I'll have you know I skimmed all the chapters." When she laughed, he leaned a little closer, not enough to be inappropriate, but enough to make her breath catch. "I came because the museum director invited me to preview the new exhibit downstairs," he said. "Didn't expect to find you here. And yet here I am, covered in clay and trying to keep kids from eating it." He tilted his head. "You're different from anyone I know." Well, that could either be a compliment or a warning. Definitely a compliment. Before she could respond, one of her students tugged on her sleeve. "Miss Calloway, I think I broke it." She turned to see a cracked bowl and a pair of wide, guilty eyes. "I'll fix it," she said quickly. "No worries, Illy." Foster stepped back, watching her kneel beside the trembling boy, gently taking the broken piece and reassuring him without condescension. When she stood again, he was still watching her, but with something quieter in his expression this time, curiosity, maybe, or something less defined. "You're good with them," he said. "They deserve someone who doesn't give up on them." He nodded slowly. "I'd like to see more of what you do." "If I wanted to, visit your classroom sometime, would that be weird?" She furrowed her brow. "You want to come to my school, if you'd allow it, sure, but no 3-piece suits." "You'll scare the kindergartners." He smiled, not a polished grin, but a real one that softened the sharp edges of his face. "Deal." Later, after the field trip ended and the kids were back on the bus, Maren lingered on the museum steps, waiting for her rideshare. She didn't expect him to be there, leaning against a black car that practically gleamed under the afternoon sun. "I figured you might need a ride," he said. "I already called one." "Cancel it. I owe you for the bowl you just rescued." She hesitated, then got in. The interior smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive she couldn't name. He didn't speak as the car pulled away, giving her space. But after a moment, he turned to her. "You're not impressed by any of this, are you?" "Should I be? Most people are." She shifted to face him. "You're successful. That's impressive. But I've met people with trust funds and penthouses who couldn't hold a real conversation if their lives depended on it." He nodded like he appreciated the honesty. "That's fair." "And you're not like them," she added quietly, surprising herself. He looked over, something unreadable passing between them. "Neither are you." The car pulled up to her apartment building. She reached for the door, but he stopped her, his voice lower now. I'm hosting a fundraiser Friday night for the Children's Hospital. Dinner, auction, all that. Her fingers paused on the handle. Come with me, he said. As my guest. She stared at him, torn between instinct and something else entirely. I don't own anything that would fit in at one of those things. I'll take care of it. I don't want to be a project. You're not, he said. You're the reason I want to go at all. She didn't answer right away, but then she nodded once. Okay, he smiled again, slower this time. I'll pick you up at 7. When she stepped out of the car, her heart beat strangely fast, not because of the invitation, but because she already knew deep down this wasn't just a night out. It was the beginning of something neither of them fully understood. The dress arrived in a cream garment bag, hand-delivered by a man in a slate gray uniform who addressed Maren by name and refused to say who sent him. But she didn't have to ask. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a navy blue gown with a plunging back and delicately beaded shoulders that shimmered when she turned it beneath the light. Her fingers hesitated on the fabric. It was elegant but not loud, clearly hands selected by someone who understood restraint disguised as wealth. It fit perfectly. When Foster arrived at her door that evening, he didn't comment on the dress. He simply offered his arm and said, "You look like the reason stars were invented." She almost laughed, but the look in his eyes made her forget how. The car waiting downstairs was different from the last. Longer, sleeker. The driver wore white gloves. No words were exchanged as they were ushered in and swept across the city. "Where is this?" she asked when the vehicle turned off park and slipped down a private drive lined with manicured hedges. "My place," he said, watching her reaction closely. "I thought we were going to a fundraiser." "We are, it's on the rooftop," she blinked. "You live here," he nodded once. "Penthouse on the top floor." The building opened into a marble foyer that led to a private elevator, no buttons, just a keycard he slid through a narrow slot. Inside the penthouse, she caught glimpses tall windows that reached to the ceiling, an open room filled with modern art and low lighting, polished floors that glowed faintly beneath their feet. But there wasn't time to linger. He offered her a glass of something pale and cold, then led her through a set of glass doors that opened onto an expansive terrace. The rooftop had been transformed, string lights crisscrossed overhead like constellations. Tall ferns in gold planters partitioned the space, and a jazz quartet played beneath a white canopy. Waiters moved soundlessly among the guests, carrying trays of wine and hors d'oeuvres. Men in tailored tuxedos glanced at their watches. Women in gowns the color of smoke and sapphires leaned in close to whisper behind jeweled fingers. Foster's hand hovered at the small of Maren's back, guiding her forward without pressure. "I've never been to anything like this," she said under her breath. "And yet you belong here more than anyone," he replied simply. They made it halfway across the room before a tall woman with a severe chignon and a neckline that defied gravity stepped in front of them. "Foster," she said, leaning in to kiss both his cheeks. "You're late." "I wasn't aware there was a call time," he said dryly, her eyes slid to Maren. "And this is—" Maren opened her mouth, but Foster beat her to it. "Maren Calloway, she's with me." Something flickered in the woman's expression, but she recovered quickly. "Lovely." "I'm Camille, chair of the hospital board." Maren extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." Camille's eyes dropped to her bracelet, a thin chain of silver and sea glass beads her students had made for her last Christmas. "Charming," she murmured, then turned back to Foster. "I'll see you at the podium." As Camille moved off, Maren exhaled slowly. "I think she wanted to burn me alive with her stare." "She tried," Foster said. "Didn't work." They made their way to a table near the stage. The evening passed in a blur of speeches and applause. Dishes were served in courses she couldn't pronounce, and the wine was poured from bottles older than she was. But through it all, Foster stayed close, never hovering, never pulling away. During the silent auction, a man with salt and pepper hair and an expensive laugh drifted over. "Foster, I didn't expect to see you out in public," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "I make exceptions," Foster replied, "for intriguing company, I'm sure." The man's eyes flicked to Maren. "I'm Owen Langston." I run the investment group that handles most of Weston Holdings' private assets. Maren smiled politely. Maren Calloway, I teach art. Owen raised a brow. Really, that's refreshing. Foster's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes cooled. She's one of the best teachers in the city. I don't doubt it, Owen said quickly, sensing the shift. Well, enjoy the night. As he walked off, Maren leaned in. You don't like him? I don't like how he looks at people like he's checking their price tags. The auction began. Items were displayed on digital screens: vacation homes, rare wines, private yacht rentals. Foster raised his hand only once, and the room hushed as his bid overtook the others without hesitation. What did you just buy? Maren asked as applause rippled. A weekend at a private villa in Lake Como, she gaped. You don't even like taking time off, he looked at her. I didn't buy it for me. Her breath caught, the night wound down, people began to filter toward the elevators. A few came to shake Foster's hand, some clearly curious about the woman at his side, but none lingered long. Eventually they were alone on the terrace, the quartet packing up, the lights dimming. She turned to face him. Why did you invite me? Because every time I see you, I feel like I've lived half my life asleep. She froze. I'm not saying that to impress you, he added. I know you're not interested in any of this, but I want to know what you're thinking when you look at a broken sculpture. I want to know why you wear your hair different every time I see you. I want to know what made you laugh so hard you cried. Maren swallowed. You don't even know if I snore. Do you? Like a freight train when I'm sick, he smiled, but there was a quiet intensity beneath it. Good. Then I'll know what I'm in for. She stared at him, the weight of his words pressing into her ribs. I don't belong in your world, Foster. He stepped closer. Then I'll build one where you do, and then he kissed her, no pretense, no stage. Just them, beneath the fading lights with the scent of peonies and rain in the air. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she'd stumbled into someone else's story. She felt like it had been waiting for her all along. The rain started just as they reached the street. Maren clutched Foster's hand as they ran beneath the awning, breathless, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. A valet dashed forward with an umbrella, but Foster waved him off. I like the rain, he said, brushing a drop off her cheek with the back of his knuckle. I don't mind it, she answered, slightly out of breath. Just not great for silk. I'll buy you 10 more dresses. Don't ruin a perfect night with ridiculous offers. It's not ridiculous if I mean it. She looked up at him, water catching in her lashes. You're impossible. Only for you. They stood there for a moment, just watching each other. The buzz of the city had dulled behind them. The afterglow of the fundraiser still hummed in her chest, but something had shifted, something deeper than champagne and candlelight. Foster's driver lowered the back door. She hesitated. Come home with me, he said, voice low but certain. She paused, trying to find the right footing. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, he said quickly. I just don't want the night to end. She studied him, the confidence in his posture contrasted by the quiet hope in his eyes. Okay, she said, heart racing. They rode in silence, but it wasn't awkward, the kind of silence that wrapped around them like a warm coat. When they arrived, he led her back into the penthouse without ceremony. No dramatic reveals or grand gestures, just the soft click of the door behind them, and the faint sound of music playing somewhere in the background. He poured her a glass of wine and then, without asking, took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was still warm from his body. Come here, he said gently, guiding her toward the piano in the corner of the room. I want to show you something. You play badly, he admitted. But my mother did. She used to sit here and play Debussy after long board meetings, like the deals she made weren't just numbers but stories. Is she? She passed a few years ago. He touched the keys, letting a few soft notes ring out. She would have liked you. Maren sat beside him on the bench, their knees grazing. Why? Because you'd have told her when she was being too sharp with people, and because you'd have made her laugh. She liked people who didn't tiptoe. Maren leaned her head against his shoulder. What happened to your father? He left when I was 12. I haven't seen him since. Foster's fingers stopped moving, resting gently on the ivory. I think it's why I built everything like this, not just the business but the control, the distance. I didn't want to be left behind again. She turned toward him. You're not alone now, his eyes searched hers, but I'm afraid I don't know how to hold on to something real. You don't have to hold on, she whispered. You just have to show up. He kissed her then, not like before, not with the slow burn of rooftop charm or the heat of champagne. This kiss was quieter but more certain, like the beginning of something that didn't need an audience. Later, as dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Maren sat curled in one of his oversized chairs, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and leather. Foster made coffee in the kitchen, moving with a comfort that surprised her. I could get used to this, she said, watching him pour a mug. Good, he replied, because I have a proposition. She raised an eyebrow. If it involves a yacht or a villa, I'm walking. It doesn't, it's about your students. That made her pause. What about them? You ever think about having your own space, a studio where they could come outside school hours, somewhere for community workshops, gallery nights, real materials, not dried-out paint trays and broken crayons? Maren blinked. Of course. But that kind of space costs. I've already found a location. Midtown, just off 53rd, natural light, safe neighborhood. I'd fund it. Quietly, you'd run it. She stood slowly. You're serious? I want to do something that matters. And I've seen what you give those kids with nothing but scraps and belief. Imagine what you could do with more. She walked to him, heart full and sharp at the same time. Why are you doing this? Because I love you, Maren. The words hit her like a gust of wind, sudden, undeniable. He held her gaze. I didn't plan for this. You knocked me over literally and figuratively, and I haven't been able to breathe right since. She reached up, her hand brushing his jaw. I love you too, but I don't want to be someone you save. I want to build something together. I want to matter not because I'm a good cause, but because I'm me. You do matter, he said. Exactly as you are. They stood there a moment longer, the city waking beneath them, the sky soft with early gold. Weeks passed, and the studio opened in early spring. Maren painted the wall herself, an abstract mural in blues and ochre with her students beside her. Foster helped hang the sign out front, the Maren Collective. He never asked for credit. He never needed to. He came by in the evenings, sometimes still in his shirt sleeves, sometimes with dinner, always with patience. The kids learned to expect him, even teasing him when he couldn't tell a watercolor brush from a fan brush. One evening, as they locked up, Foster held her hand and said, I've never felt more at peace than I do right now. Maren leaned into him. That's because you finally stopped running. I wasn't running, you were, from being known. He kissed her temple. Not anymore. The summer brought warmth and color and a quiet rhythm they hadn't known they needed. No fanfare, no headlines, just two people who'd collided by accident and stayed by choice. When he knelt in the middle of the studio one afternoon, paint on her cheek and students watching from the doorway, he didn't pull out a diamond the size of a chandelier, just a simple gold ring and a question that needed no rehearsed speech. She said yes before he finished asking. The day Maren and Foster exchanged vows, there were no cameras, no society pages, no velvet ropes or gold-plated invitations. Instead, there was a garden tucked behind a historic brownstone in Brooklyn, wisteria draped from an old trellis, and a soft breeze that carried the scent of wild jasmine. Chairs were arranged in uneven rows, their ribbons hand-tied by her students after class. A string quartet played a song Foster had once heard her hum under her breath while rinsing paint brushes. Maren wore a gown with no train and no corset, just silk that moved when she did. Her hair was pinned loosely, a few strands falling around her face the way he liked. She walked barefoot down the grass aisle, her bouquet a mess of wildflowers she'd picked herself that morning. Foster stood waiting beneath a canopy of ivy, wearing a dark blue suit that matched the sky just before rain. His tie was crooked, thanks to a nervous 12-year-old who insisted on helping him get ready. You're late, he whispered as she reached him. You're impatient, she whispered back. I've been waiting since the moment you crashed into me. Their vows were spoken in low voices, promises that didn't need theatrics. He promised to show up even when it was hard. She promised to stay even when it got messy. He promised to listen. She promised not to let him take himself too seriously. They both promised to keep growing, never side by side out of habit, but always face to face by choice. Afterward, they danced on the lawn to a scratchy vinyl record of Billie Holiday, surrounded by mismatched lanterns and laughter. No one wore tuxedos. Some of the kids had mud on their shoes. At one point, someone dropped a tray of mini quiches and no one cared. It was imperfect. Honest. The kind of day that didn't need retouching. That night, they didn't fly off to a secluded island or a waterfront mansion. They went home to the penthouse. Maren kicked off her shoes at the door, trailing her dress behind her like a forgotten ribbon. Foster carried the cake, half sliced in a bakery box. "You're marrying a woman who just ate 2 servings of macaroni salad," she said as she curled up on the couch beside him. "I married a woman who made me want things I didn't believe in," he said, pulling her close. She rested her head on his chest. "Like what? Peace, a home." "My own story." They fell asleep like that, in formal wear and bare feet, the city's lullaby humming through the windows. Seasons passed. The studio grew. What began as a single room became a 3-story hub for creativity and community. There were after-school programs, weekend exhibits, and a scholarship fund that quietly bore the name O'Connell, though Maren never mentioned it to her students. She taught them to create for the joy of it, not for recognition. Foster stepped back from day-to-day operations at Weston Holdings. He served on the board, mentored young entrepreneurs, and spent his mornings on the rooftop terrace drinking coffee beside the woman who'd taught him more about courage than any executive deal ever had. One spring evening, Maren came home to find the lights off and the studio quiet. She walked past the front gallery expecting to see a forgotten backpack or a stray paintbrush. Instead, she found Foster in the back room, standing beside a covered canvas. "You weren't supposed to be here yet," he said, brushing his hand through his hair. "I could say the same about you." She approached the canvas. "What is it?" He hesitated, then pulled the cloth away. On the canvas was a painting unfinished, rough around the edges, but unmistakably hers. It was the rooftop where they first danced, but with one difference. In the center, he'd painted the 2 of them. Not in formal wear, not under string lights, but barefoot, laughing mid-spin. "You painted this." "I tried," he said. "I wanted to ask if you'd help me finish it." Together, she didn't speak for a long moment, then she picked up a brush and dipped it into a jar of blue. "I thought you'd never ask." Years later, their home was filled with things that couldn't be bought: a lopsided sculpture, a paint-stained apron. A photo of them laughing in the rain, snapped unknowingly by one of her students. They still danced in the kitchen. He still made coffee every morning. She still left her shoes in the hallway and forgot where she put her keys. He never minded. On their anniversary, she gave him a letter. It read, "I never believed in fate, but I believe in you. In us. And I've learned that sometimes the best stories aren't the ones we write, they're the ones we crash into." He kept it tucked inside his planner, beside a dried petal from her wedding bouquet. And every time he opened it, he was reminded of the moment everything changed, not when she spilled coffee, not when she said yes, but when she looked at him, truly looked, and made him feel for the first time like he was completely, irrevocably seen and loved, just as he was, always.